Boy, YouTube is starting slow this morning. Okay. Welcome, everybody. Last call for anybody that'd like to join the panel. Please raise your Zoom hand. Let's see. Saw one there, but it disappeared. Okay. Great. Well, we're going to get started. Welcome, everybody, to Digital Forum. And for me, at least, a nice, wet spring morning. Just want to thank everybody again for coming. It looks like we've got about 43 people here this morning, which is a pretty good start. I'm Jeff Klug for some of the new people here. I know Ralph has gotten a lot of the North Shore Camera Club people to join. Hopefully there's a bunch of you here, and welcome. What we do today, basically the first hour, we do general questions and answers from people. So anybody can put a question in the Q&A. And we'll be glad to try to answer them. I'm running out of screens for all this stuff. I need more screens. And so we run on your questions. The first hour is going to be just general questions and discussion, and I have a couple that I want to talk about as we get started here. The second hour is going to be workflow from the camera to the computer. So I'm going to start it out, and I've got a little presentation going on how I shoot, and then get it all the way to the camera before I start editing. So let's see here. So my first question for the group and for the attendees, and you can put your comments in the chat. I'm sort of looking for a ruthless review of the Brian Hansel seminar. I hope everybody enjoyed it, but I want to know all the things we did wrong, and I know what we did right, but I'm looking for things that we might have done wrong or things that we could do to improve the seminar, because it looks like we may be doing this for another year. So I'm looking for a ruthless review, and anybody that has good suggestions, any suggestions on what we might have done better. If you're a panelist, let me know here. If you're an attendee, put it in the chat so that we can try to improve it for next year. I know I've got a list of about 25 things that we did wrong that we saw in the background. And so are there anything that you guys noticed that we could do better with the virtual seminar? And don't all speak at once.
Hey, Jeff?
Yeah?
One of the things that, I don't know if you can do it any better or not, but I had a problem getting into the seminar.
Yep.
And regardless, it just seems that every time I try to use Eventbrite, there's an issue. I had a couple of seminars with Lisa Lengel, and she uses Eventbrite sometimes, and I had problems getting in through that. I'm just throwing that out there. I don't know if anybody else had problems or likes or dislikes the Eventbrite. I know you're kind of limited to what you can use.
Yeah. No, to be honest, I don't like Eventbrite, but it's about the only one that is connected right now with Zoom. So, your problem was your email was wrong, but.
Yeah, but I actually don't know how that happened, because I went back and looked at the paperwork and it was correct.
Huh. Yeah, because what it sent to me was that it was wrong. But and once I sent you a new link, yeah,
Yeah, once I
and
got
that's
the
why.
other link, I got in, but I went back and looked at all the paperwork when you told me that, and I'm like, there's nothing wrong here.
Yeah,
Because they sent me
interesting.
the thing that I had the tickets. And if I
Oh,
gave them the wrong email address, they couldn't have sent that to me.
how could they have done that? Isn't that weird? Man, that's crazy.
That's what made me
Um,
wonder about what you said it was wrong, because I had gotten information from them. I just couldn't get
yeah,
in.
yeah. And
Anyway,
that was
just a
it
comment.
because Zoom had a email address that was off by one letter.
Hmm.
Um, so so
Wasn't the
that's
first time
interesting.
though.
Yeah, and that's why we tried to bypass Eventbrite after the registration, so that so Zoom was sending out the notices as well, and I figured everybody could just log in through the Zoom notice, which was easier. But yeah, I'm going to keep looking, but unfortunately right now there's only that choice of Eventbrite for registering. Anybody else have anything they think we could do better on
Yeah,
that?
Jeff,
Yeah.
I attended, and the only thing I didn't like is he didn't have any maps of where all these different places that he suggested we go to, because I am going to go on that PSA Wisconsin chapter outing to Duluth
Mm-hmm.
in May, and I made screenshots of everything, but I'll have to look it up on the map to see where all these places are. And it would have been nice to have a little map, especially
Okay.
if you could print it later.
Sure. Okay. Yeah, he doesn't. Did you get to download? We did put the PDF of his show in so that you could get that download of his presentation along with the videos.
Oh, no, I didn't check that out. I will.
Oh, okay. I can maybe send you a copy of that too.
Jeff, where's that PDF at?
It was in the download file with all the videos.
You mean an email afterwards that you sent out?
Yeah, right. I can, anybody that wants it, just send me an email, and right, we had to close that Dropbox link after a week because Brian only allowed us a week to have the videos up. But he didn't have a problem with doing the letting he sent us the PDFs that we could hand out to people. So
Hey, Jeff, it looks like Rick Bueller wants to be promoted to a panelist.
oh, okay. Can you take care of that?
I don't know, can I?
You should be. Or I can probably do it here. Let me see.
Here, Bueller.
I just have to find them.
Yeah, I got it.
Okay. Great. Anybody else have any comments on it?
Thank you.
Yep.
No problem, Rick.
I thought it was a great presentation. I liked the opportunity that you had plenty of opportunity for people to ask any kind of question they possibly had. And I thought that was great. You seemed very, very willing. I just really liked this presentation.
Good.
It would have been nice though if we had. I would have loved to have had his PowerPoint presentation printed off in front of me when we went through it, just add for notes and that kind of thing.
Yeah, it was in the Dropbox after, but yeah, he didn't have it for us before. And that might be something that we could ask him for. Ask the speaker next time. Okay. Anybody else?
Jeff, there was one note from Jeff Winkler. He liked the seminar. He wanted to know if it could be a Zoom webinar instead of a Zoom meeting. And it actually was a Zoom webinar.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, so yeah, it was a webinar, and we'll always do it as a webinar, and we'll always try to provide the video afterwards. One of the problems I ran into was the video was so long it took all afternoon for it to render before we could even get it put out by Zoom. So that was a big problem. And now we know that we need to break it up into 2 videos because it was also seemed to be a problem for people to download the videos. And I found out that you Windows guys can't read .mov videos, so, and all my video editing exports in QuickTime, so learned that quick.
Times and everything, so.
Yep. And I use Final Cut Pro, which is an Apple product, and they hide the MP4 output deep in their system. So it took me a while to be able to find a way to convert it. So, okay. Well, that helps. And if anybody has any suggestions on how to improve the seminar, because we expect to be doing another seminar like that next March. Even though things may be open, we have to start working on that now. And since things aren't open yet, it's really difficult for us to plan a webinar on short notice or an in-person one. Plus, if we have to social distance, that's going to put the price of the room 2 or 3 times, which is, we expect that if we did an in-person seminar next year, we expect the price to be probably double of what we paid in 2019. So we'd probably be going to at least $100 a person or more, just because of the room size that we may need. And as everything has gotten more expensive. So the webinar can save everybody quite a bit of money. Plus, I feel you can see the screen so much better than sitting in person.
Agreed, Jeff. Agreed on that.
Yeah. So that's why we sort of hope to see what we'll end up doing in the future. But next year is going to be a webinar again. So.
Rick,
Plus,
Sigma had a,
Jeff, we had, with the poll, we had 75% of the attendees would actually prefer the next meeting to be a Zoom meeting.
Right. So, and that was good to see. So I think Zoom meetings are a lot nicer for seeing the information right in front of you instead of, trying to look at a screen 50 feet away. But, so, okay.
Jeff, I was going to mention Sigma had a couple of comments in the Q&A.
Okay. Yeah, I was just going to look at that some more. Okay, she had no problems with Eventbrite. Okay, I'll have to make sure, I'll put the PDFs and the links and all that into a Dropbox, and I think I'll have to let everybody, I'll send it out to all the seminar people again. Because I think that would be easy enough for me to do. I've done that for a couple of people who said they didn't get it. Okay, I think that's got everybody in the Q&A except for Rick Hawthorne is asking if anybody's used the new Nikon NX Studio software. So has anybody played with that yet? I've gotten as far as downloading it, and that's as far as I got. I ran out of time. And I don't think I got it downloaded on this computer. I got it downloaded on my work computer or home computer. But has anybody been able to play with it so far? And not that many Nikon people here. Well, Rick, I'm hoping to play with it in the next month and check back next month, and maybe I can give you a report on what I found with it. Let me know what you think of it too, and be glad to try to answer it. You know, see, it sounded interesting. I'm pretty heavy into Lightroom, so I'm not sure how much I'm going to use it. But you never know. Anybody else have questions or problems?
Anybody downloaded the new Topaz? Was it AI and denoise? I think it came out this week, and someone told me it was really different.
Huh. I haven't upgraded. I didn't feel like spending another $50 on it. I thought about it, but all these upgrades are getting expensive.
Wasn't the last
And-
one free?
Yeah. Anybody? Nobody? Jeez, we're not doing well this morning.
Must
I
be
would-
the gloomy weather.
I didn't upgrade the denoise, but they let me upgrade my sharpen program, and that seems to be better now. The Topaz Sharpen is much better.
Okay.
Thank you.
So, Jim, are you on a PC or a Mac?
On a Mac.
You are, okay, because there was one comment in the Q&A, his Topaz Sharpen, the new install crashes on him, and I know he's on a Mac, so that's interesting.
I will say that it's really slow. I mean, it takes, after you've said sharpen something, it can take 10 minutes for it to run that sharpen. So that's not something you want to do on a lot of photos. It's just too time consuming.
Wow.
Oh, is right. Yeah.
Yeah. I gotta admit, I've got denoise, but I've got the old version, and I don't use it, so I didn't upgrade. And I also have the one that resizes stuff. And I haven't updated that one. I have no idea how many updates it's been on it.
Would the speed of the Topaz, how fast it works, depend on how much RAM you have?
Probably.
I'm sure
just
it does. I'm sure it's also if you have, graphics cards and so on in your computer and which ones. But it still seems to be much slower than the original or the version before that I had. Now, again, this could just be they haven't optimized it yet for a lot of machines. And usually those will come as, improvements in the next few upgrades. So.
Well, I bought the total Topaz package except for the video, I don't know, 2 or 3 months ago, and I haven't downloaded it yet into my new computer yet. Yeah, so that'll help my Lightroom and Photoshop, but I'm sure it will also help the Topaz, but I'm just curious.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I know it's an intensive program for what it does, so, but boy, if it takes 10 minutes to fix a photo, that's a little slow for me.
But I will say it did a really good job.
Yeah.
I mean, there's always a payoff at the end.
Yeah.
But still, it's just slow.
Yeah. Their old one wasn't that slow, and I thought the old one did a nice job, but I only use it for a few special things, so I don't use it that much. I got Brian Kruger that said that he liked the old version better, and he updated both for free. So, yeah, I know they've got whole package upgrades that they're doing right now, and I think they're getting a lot of, for the Mac people, they're getting it set up for the new M1 Mac, so I think is part of what they're doing. I had somebody that was trying to do a workflow with Lightroom and Topaz products, and they were having a harder time. I think that was Roger Krill. He's not here today. He was trying to figure out a way to be able to work it so that he could stay with a raw file more often with some of the Topaz stuff. And he came up with a strange system. I was hoping he'd be around that he could explain it, but I don't see him here, so yeah, we can't. But yeah, okay. Okay, Sheldon Shaw is asking if any of us have an opinion on the Adobe Super Resolution in ACR or Photoshop. Is a feature they will use routinely in their post-process. Has anyone found that after using the Super Resolution feature on a photo, other post-processing features will not work? I've heard about it, but I gotta admit, I haven't had a chance to play with it. Has anybody updated Photoshop lately and played with that?
So I guess Jeff, is what he's saying there, then it should be the last thing you use then if you're using it in Photoshop, because if nothing else will work, it wants it to be the last.
I think that's what you, I think that's probably what it is. I gotta admit, I know about it. I think I don't know if my Photoshop actually had it in there. It's been a crazy week for me, so I just haven't had a chance.
Yeah, and it is still so new. It's only been out for what, a week or two, isn't it? Or
yeah, I think it's just a week. I think it was in the last round of updates.
Yeah.
So that's another one that I think we're going to have to push off to next month, and it is something I'm going to check on.
I did try it, and the issue I had was that it made the image such a big file that Lightroom didn't want to deal with it anymore. It was too big for Lightroom. But
okay.
If you are going to, and I want to try this next, is take like a photo that I cropped heavily, like a bird, and then super resolution that. Because I started with a Nikon D850 file, so it was already 45 megabytes.
Oh yeah, that's a pretty good file size.
Yeah, so it didn't really need it. I just wanted to play with it to see what it would do, and the file was like gigabytes.
Right.
Lightroom just wouldn't even import it. It says too big.
Yeah, if you get too big, yeah, Lightroom can't read it. Randy, if you can see if you can turn your volume down on your microphone at all, you're coming in really loud. Just to let you know.
All right.
With my earpiece, my ears ringing a little.
Sorry about that.
That's okay. Well, I'm glad somebody at least has played with it. I haven't had a chance. And most of my files are pretty huge as it was. Everything I'm working on is pretty big, so I haven't had to crop down tight. But I'll have to try taking a small file and seeing how that works. And we'll report back, because yeah, they keep bringing this stuff out so fast, and there's only so many hours in a day. And I had a crazy week this week, so yeah, check back with us on that.
like Hubert's got something there, Jeff.
I shoot Fujifilm, and I tried it on a couple of my raw files, and I didn't see that much improvement, in my opinion. So my raw files are only 26 megapixels. So, but then again, the files I looked at were pretty good to begin with. So, but
So did it increase it in size quite a bit?
No, it didn't seem to. A little
Okay.
bit. Not. It didn't seem noticeable to me. Far as I think it went from maybe 36 megapixels up to maybe about 42 or 43. And that was
Oh,
about it.
all right.
That was on
Yeah.
a.
Might be interesting to try that on a JPEG photo coming out of a phone.
Yeah. That might be
Yeah.
interesting.
Yeah, that might be a good one to try it with.
'Cause it does work on JPEGs too. So
Yeah. No, I heard about it, but yeah, like I said, I didn't get a chance to play with it, so. So if anybody plays with it, we'll talk about it next month. So, okay. Let's see, we got Ramona is asking, she recently purchased a Canon R mirrorless camera. I have downloaded the updated firmware and Canon editing software. However, neither my built-in card reader nor my external card reader recognizes the images on the SD card. I was able to download them wirelessly, but if I have a lot of images, that would take some time. She uses a PC with Windows 10. Has anybody else had a issue with that? Yeah, any Canon people here with something newer? The only thing I'm thinking is that that's probably a new raw file format for the Canon R. So maybe the Windows can't read the raw file format?
That would be my suspicion too, Jeff, because obviously Canon software is going to be set up to do it. So, Ramona, so are you downloading, like so you're downloading using Canon Professional, the downloader, and then you're importing them into another program? Is that what you're doing, Ramona? Wait for it.
Yep. Well, we got Scott McNeil, who's shot with the new R6, but he uses a Mac and has no problems.
I guess, question is she trying to download into a folder on the desktop, or is she trying to import them directly into Lightroom or Photoshop or some other program?
Yeah, exactly, Brian. That's what I was kind of hoping she'd type back an answer, because that would help. Here it comes.
My other question too is when she transfers her files from her SD card to the computer, is she actually taking the card out of her camera, plugging it into a card reader, and then I'm hoping the card reader is new enough and fast enough that the computer can read it. That's the other thing.
Yeah. Yeah, if it's an old card reader, that could be a problem.
Yeah, true. And she said she is using a card reader, both internally or externally. Neither one of them works, so that could very well be, Rick.
I'm thinking I'm using the SamDisk reader, and that seems to be working pretty good, for at least for me.
Yeah, that being a new mirrorless camera, that could be using the higher grade SD card, and yeah, if you're using an old card reader, it's not going to be able to read that card. So
Right.
yeah, I would try a new card reader. We used to run into that problem before with certain formats not playing on old card readers, and you might try just a new card reader and see if that does it.
And it could be a driver issue too.
Yeah. But I would say,
I'm thinking in the card reader being able to read that card. That's what I'm thinking.
Especially if she can wirelessly download it, the computer's able to see it that way.
Right.
But yeah, that's super slow.
I don't know the R6, but maybe she can connect a cable to the R6 and bypass the card reader.
Right. That might be something to try.
Hey, first step would be go into Windows Explorer and see if she can see see if the computer recognizes that that reader. That'd be the first step to go. You understand what I'm saying, Jeff?
Yeah.
Use Window Explorer and then go to show everything that's connected to the PC.
Probably a cold day today, so.
And then ought to be able to see that card reader, or ought to be able to see that card inserted within that card reader. That'd be the first step to go. If the computer isn't recognizing that card reader, then there's something right there.
Yeah. Yeah. I gotta admit, I barely know enough about Windows to help, so, but that sounds like a good thing. And yeah, the other suggestion would be to try plugging the camera with its USB cord right into the computer and see if it can read the card that way. And download the card straight. I don't normally recommend that, but that would be the other thing if you can't read it through that Explorer program. So
That's what I do
helps.
is I use the camera directly to my computer and transfer it that way. What's the reason why you say not to use the camera to the computer?
Well, because you're going through a lot more electronics, and if the camera would die, you got to make sure the battery's in good shape. I always do it straight from a card reader in. Now, she's saying that Explorer shows the reader is there, but that there are no images. So that would probably say that the reader is...
I'm guessing the reader's not reading the card.
Yeah, I can say it's like a codex. Yeah.
That's obvious.
Yeah.
Maybe it's the driver.
Yeah, it's either the driver for the reader or the reader's too old, and you might try a new reader. But I would actually try the USB cord right from the camera to the computer and see if that does it.
She's saying that what the camera used and seller couldn't find the cable, but I would imagine that's pretty much what is it, a HDMI mini to a USB, wouldn't it be?
No, it should be probably that camera would probably be a USB-C cable.
Yeah.
I just Googled it. It's a USB-C. So
yeah,
it could be that perhaps she's plugging the other end in her computer to a port that's not a fast port. Maybe it's a USB 2.0 port. So look to see if the port that you're plugging it into has like a little lightning bolt icon. That would be for the USB 3.0 type of port.
Or you might have to get a cable that goes to USB 3, and that might work. USB-C to USB 3. Boy, that's a mouthful to say. That's a harder cable to find, but you can get them. Probably could find it on Amazon if you needed to.
I'll just mention one other possibility. This would be rare. They could be using subfolders, and in Lightroom, for instance, if you don't check C subfolders, you may not actually get them to open, let's say in Lightroom. So it's possible they're putting them in that kind of a structure now. I don't know the answer to that.
Yeah.
I know Sony's do that where there's a substructure and the videos are one place and the pictures are in another. And again, if you don't have that checked, you only see the folder for the card, but you wouldn't see where the stuff is stored.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it sounds like, though, she's not even seeing folders. She's seeing the reader, but not anything after that.
Yeah, normally there'd be a folder where the images would be, if you scroll down, see the structure.
So that would make
that's
me
weird.
think
that's a problem right there.
Yeah, it could be that the reader, and I've saw this 5-6 years ago when readers were changing, that an older reader couldn't read the new card or the new card format. And which would either be a driver problem or just buying a newer reader, because I I think that takes that SD. It's the higher grade SD card, I believe.
I guess I'm wondering, Jeff, if Ramona, are you using a card reader built into the computer, or is it an external card reader?
Yeah.
It sounds like she tried both, Brian, on her original note, that she did try the built-in one and then did try an external.
Okay, I missed that. Thank you.
Yeah, Peter's got a good suggestion in trying another card. Maybe the card is causing the problem.
It kind of goes what you were just saying, though, Jeff, is, if it's an older card, just make sure that the computer is still, the new Canon software is
Right.
still reading the older card, then it's not the
Yeah.
software, it's the card,
Yeah, because that's a pretty new camera.
Yeah.
Well, I hope that helps give you some ideas, Ramona, and let us know if it works. And if not, we'll keep trying to come up with ideas for you to try. But
we'll expect a full written report next meeting.
yeah, that can be a problem with computers and the different connections. It's getting to the point I've got so many wires around here, it gets to be nuts.
About hang yourself with them,
Yeah. I just got a new wireless Go microphone, wireless microphone set up, and it all has to be USB-C, and I've got more USB 3s, and they actually gave you adapters for both, which help, but you still got to find even the ports to plug in. So.
Right.
Okay, she's going to give it a try and let us know. Any other questions, people? Come on, we've got 33 attendees. You got to all have some questions over there.
I have a question.
Oh, we got somebody here.
Yeah, I have a question.
Sure, go ahead.
I'd like to know how many Mac users have upgraded to Big Sur and what they think of it if they did.
My question also.
Okay. Well, I'll start, and I can tell you that I updated right after the seminar to Big Sur on both of my computers, and I have had zero problems so far.
And I've had it on my MacBook running pretty much since it was first released, and I really haven't run into any issues that are related to Big Sur.
And I've got to admit, one thing that I really like is I can read the fonts better on a small type with Big Sur than I could in Catalina. So it seems that they're far enough along that you can upgrade without much problem.
I haven't had any.
I believe.
Fine.
Yeah, I upgraded mine and about a month ago, and I haven't had any problems. The only thing is, I don't know what programs they were, and they weren't in the photography area that didn't work, but I expected that because they're quite old. So.
And I have another question about Nick. I see they were having a sale, and the sale is still good for one more day. And I'd like to know who's using the newer version and if they like it.
I've got the new version. Be honest, I don't see any different from the old version. I only use two of them, though. I use Color Effects Pro and Silver Effects, and I didn't see really much change. So yeah, I'm not quite sure what the new benefits were. They were supposedly had more presets in them. But I haven't seen anything that really changed a whole lot from the last one, but I updated it because it was an inexpensive price, and it is one that I plan to keep using. Anybody else using Nick?
I am.
That's up.
I updated too, and I didn't see much of a change.
Yeah.
It looked pretty much the same as the old one.
Yeah, that's what I noticed. Yeah, I really didn't see a whole lot of difference. So if you're not using it a lot, you might stay with the old version, because I'm not sure really what the new version got you other than, what was it, $50 or something to update.
So,
Which
so
is
it got you
hard.
poor?
Yeah.
Well, when I upgraded my computer, the old version didn't work. That's why I have to consider getting the new version.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Yeah, that's part of it. And that's why Nick is one that I do use a little more often besides Luminaire and On One Photo. So I update that one when the updates do come. But yeah, I got to admit, I didn't see any changes from the old version. But it could be the way I use it, because I have limited use that I do with it. Oh, Peter Chow even mentioned that he uses the M1 MacBook Air, and he's not doing photo stuff, but he's had no problems. I got to admit, Big Sur it's far enough along now. I think that's going to be a pretty stable program now. And I like the looks of it. It's a lot cleaner than the old version of Catalina.
Yeah, like what you said about the font. I mean, they crisp that up quite a bit, and I don't know if it's a totally different font or what, but there's definitely a difference when you're reading it versus on both of mine right next to each other. I've still got Catalina on the old computer, and it is quite a noticeable difference between the two of them.
Yeah. Yep. I can read things so much easier on the Big Sur.
Yeah.
And I updated it on my home computer first, so.
Yeah, and I think the font is more akin to what they have in the iPad OS and the and iOS.
Yeah.
So.
Any other questions? Boy, it's a quiet group today.
Can I ask a question on cameras, purchasing cameras and locations? Sure. I'm looking to compare a Fuji camera to a Sony, and I know I'm comparing apples to oranges, but I, would like to know of a place where you can, I think it's the Fuji X Pro and the full frame Alpha C7. And I know they're a little different, but, get a hands-on and look at them. How best in southeastern Wisconsin to do something like that? Is that even possible?
Yeah, you'd have to call around. I gotta admit, in Brookfield, the Best Buy's cameras, Best Buy appliance store on Blue Mound Road has probably one of the biggest camera display setups. They're one of the superstores, and you're able to look at a lot. Now, I don't know. I know they carry Sony. I do not know if they carry the Fuji camera. But they even have a thing there where you can take pictures of little displays, and that's a nice way to be able to test out camera gear to see which one you'd like. If that's what you're looking to try to do.
Yeah, and I know, you look at B&H, and I can't go to New York and see what they have. I don't know if there's anything down in the Chicago area like that or not.
Well, I mean, in Milwaukee, though, you got Arts and Mike Corelli's. I don't know if either of those have both of them.
Okay.
Yeah. You'd have to call to see who may have the cameras.
Yeah. Okay.
But that's the only reason why if checking a Best Buy superstore, if they have one in your area, that's another option that seems to have worked well. Better if Mike Crivello's or Arts. I don't know if Arts carries Fuji cameras or not. I haven't been in an Arts store in quite a while.
Yes, when I switched over to Sony, I went to Arts and they had Fuji and Sony, so I could compare the grip. I don't know what model Fuji he's looking at, but they had both.
Right.
Okay. So it's just basically calling around. Has anybody purchased that new Alpha 7C, the compact with the full frame that they just came out with? Anybody has any comments? Okay.
Yeah. I gotta admit, I don't do Sony, so
Thank you.
that's one brand that I'm not a big fan of. But I know they're probably pretty decent, but
Yeah, it took me 20 years to go back to Sony.
yeah. I've had Sony mess with me, and I won't go into that story. They burned me too many times for me to trust them again. But that's all right. My Nikon cameras, they may be going bankrupt, so
Yeah, things don't look too good.
I may be in trouble there too. I may end up a Canon guy yet. Jeez, be
I don't know,
scary.
I gotta believe that if that does get to that point for Nikon, somebody will pick it up, and kind of like what happened with Olympus, you know.
Nikon's big problem right now is they just don't have material to ship.
Yeah.
I mean, you try to buy a 7.2 or a 6.2, and they're just not out there.
No, I got lucky getting the 7.2. Brian had mentioned what you got, the Z50, right?
Right, C50.
Right.
Got Best Buy.
When you mentioned that, I went on and looked at Adorama, and they just happened to have gotten a bunch of 7.2s in, and I quickly purchased one. And it wasn't more than a week and a half later that they were out and not available again. So
even Amazon doesn't have 7.2s that are onshore. They got offshore, but not American.
Yeah.
From when I checked the other day, so they're in short supply.
Nikon's always been that way. Unfortunately, they've been that way for 40 years. They've never been able to keep stock supplied. I don't know why they've never gotten better at that. To me, that's one of the big drawbacks with them. But
one of their chip suppliers had a bad fire in Japan, so
right,
that's taken a while to recover from.
Yeah, and now they're going to making their own chips. So
I heard there was a shortage of chips, and they're looking at starting up a company here in the United States to manufacture them, because there's a concern that China is the big one that makes a lot of these chips, and they don't want them to be the sole dominant country that's doing that.
Yeah.
And it's not just camera chips. I mean, those chips, that same company, I think, are the ones making the chips for the trucks, and you can't hardly buy a new truck right now because of it.
Yes, 66% of the chips are that building that burnt down in Japan supplies 66% of the cars in the world on the chips for the cars.
Yeah. So.
Oh, and they also do, of course, for our computers and our laptops and our cameras. So it really takes a really beating on us.
Yeah, it's a bunch of equipment, because I know there's a chip shortage for a lot of the camera converters to converting to HDMI for us to play out in the computer, and those parts are getting a little hard to come by. So, any other questions?
I saw some software on YouTube where there were black and white images that would have been taken like in the 20s in that area, and they were scanned, and then they were colorized, and then they were, what I thought was neat is somehow they added, like if you had most people of that era when pictures were taken, they didn't smile or anything, and just a very somber look all the time. Well, the software can somehow go in and like change a person's expressions, like smiling and stuff like that. Is that something special to do that? Is there like a service that's doing that, or how?
Photoshop is doing it. The newest version of Photoshop in the neural filters will convert a black and white photo to color.
And you can change the orientation of the head in it too, can't you, Jeff? I think you showed us that.
Yeah, you can change the orientation of the head, and you can make people smile.
Okay.
And all that. So, yeah, the latest version of Photoshop with their new neural filters does actually a nice job of converting black and white back into color. And it's amazing how it sort of picks the right colors a lot of times. Yeah, and they never smiled back then because the exposures were so long that a person can't hold a smile long enough. It uses the wrong kind of muscles, so everybody was always grim looking.
My wife's into ancestry, and she's got a mess of old photos here at the house. And we've scanned a lot of them, and they're obviously all in black and white. But she had found a website, and I can't think of it right off the top of my head. And they did the colorizing. They did a great job. It was all free. She just
Wow.
uploaded the file, and it colorized it, and it came back very, very nice. In fact, better than I think Photoshop does in some of the coloration.
Yeah, it could be. Wow, that's interesting. Hadn't heard about that. A lot of stuff out there. A lot of stuff. Well, maybe I'll go right into the workflow talk that I was going to do, since
Hey,
we're
Jeff,
getting.
one quick question before you
Sure,
go.
Bob.
I think last month somebody was asking a question about, is there an educational video on histograms? And I guess I'd be interested in that too, if anybody found a good YouTube video on explaining everything about histograms.
I know I've got a talk on histograms. I could certainly talk about it. Anybody else have anything on histograms? It's not real complicated. If nothing else, maybe next month I can pull that short talk out and do a brief explanation on histograms, if that would help you.
Well, that would help me, right?
So I have more information on the colorization.
Okay.
This is a place called myheritage.com, and it's free to sign up for. And then I guess you have to poke around to find where they do the colorization if you're interested.
Okay, great.
Before you leave on colorizations, where is that in Photoshop?
It's up under filters, and then the new neural filters, and then it's one that you have to turn on, and it's still in beta testing.
Okay,
but
it is on the latest version right now.
It's on the latest. Yeah, you need the latest version of Photoshop for it to work.
Okay, thanks.
Sure. So, all right. Let me go to screen share here. So I'm going to go through, and I'll probably go through this quick, and if anybody has questions, ask. But I'm going from basically camera to computer, not into editing at all, but everything that I do up to that point for workflow. And I got to get myself on that screen.
For what it's worth, Jeff, your font is a lot crisper here.
Yeah, the screen share gets a higher quality. I was hoping to do it a simpler way. So a couple of things that I end up doing, I set a folder name in my camera to the name of my type of camera that I'm using. So if I'm using a Nikon Z camera, I label that folder to that. So like here, for Nikon at least, I'm pretty sure you can probably do this in Canon, but my folders in my memory card are for like my D850 are labeled ND850, and the folder starts at 100, and every time I go through 10,000 images, it goes up from there. What that does is it lets me know which camera I've shot the files in once I've downloaded it, so I've got a better idea. So then I also rename my files to the camera. So the camera numbering system is like for my D850, it says 850, and then, well, actually it's a line 850, and then it's a 4-set number. And my camera doesn't reset the number whenever I reformat the card. It keeps counting till it hits 10,000, and then it starts over again. So for my 850, it's a D850, I put in 850. For the Z6, I put in Z6. My Z7 II, I put in as Z72. And that way, when I'm looking at my images before I do my final renaming, I actually know which camera shot it without having to go into the metadata deeply to see. I leave my file number sequence on, so my camera just constantly counts from 1 to 10,000, and then it starts over again back at 1. That way I never get a duplicate file number. If you turn it off, then every time I reformat the camera, it resets the numbering system back to 1. And that I reformat so often that I would start getting too many duplicate numbers. So this way I just keep going from 1 to 10,000, then it just starts back over to 1. Some of the shooting settings that I do, when I'm doing general shootings, I shoot in aperture automatic. I bracket everything with 3 shots at 1 to 2 stops difference. More 2 stops, depends on the camera that I'm shooting with. Some of them it's 1 stop, some is 2 stops. If I'm shooting sports and wildlife, I shoot in aperture automatic most of the time, but then I turn on my auto ISO so that I can keep my shutter speed up higher. Sometimes I will set it to shutter automatic if I need to control the shutter speed. But most of the time I'm shooting aperture automatic because I'm more interested in controlling my depth of field and letting my shutter speed stay pretty high, and that's where the auto ISO comes in. And I limit my auto ISO so it doesn't go much above 1600, because shooting outside, that you don't really need to go much higher than that. Also, when I'm out, I have found an inexpensive GPS unit that works pretty well, and it marks all my images with the location that I shoot in. This is the current one that I've got. 7 Oak, I think, is maybe the name of it. I found it on Amazon for $45. And it just plugs into the port on the side of the camera, and every time you take a picture, it just automatically puts in the GPS location. A lot less expensive than the Nikon ones, which are about $200 each, and it's fairly quick. Biggest thing is it is a drain on the camera battery, and it has an on-off switch, so if you turn it off, then of course you don't get any readings. If you leave it on, it does tend to drain the battery down a little bit. So it's got some trade-offs, but I love it because I can never remember where I'm shooting at. Now, my workflow for when I travel is I've got my laptop computer. I have 2 hard drives, USB hub, and card readers. So this is my basic setup, although Ken's probably laughing because he knows that the bag I carry sometimes is a lot bigger than what this small amount is. But this is my bare necessity. I have the 2 hard drives. They're both 1 terabyte, and all the stuff goes on one hard drive and then is backed up onto the second hard drive. So I have at least 2 copies. A third copy stays on my laptop while I'm traveling unless I run out of room on that computer. So my workflow from this is to download to the desktop. So I take my memory cards and I'm going to download to the desktop. It comes in a folder that's labeled something like this one, but then I will take and relabel that to a date. And then I add a new folder on my desktop that is the trip name. This would be the first thing I really end up doing, so that when I download the card, that folder gets renamed with a date, and then I drag that folder into the main folder that's titled, so that I end up with a system like this where it's Superior 2017 and all my different days of shooting, and each card gets labeled 01, 02. If I'm doing a lot of videos, which I'm starting to do videos, that's why you see the V after the lettering. That means that it's all video files. From there, I import into Lightroom. So I take that Superior 2017, I import it into Lightroom. Lightroom then puts it onto my travel archive. But at the same time, it makes a duplicate set that goes to the travel archive backup. And so that way I have a complete second set of files, or it actually could be the third set if you consider the one that's on my desktop. Then when I'm in Lightroom, while I'm traveling, I will start to go through the images and basically look at deleting the images that are out of focus or are completely bad. I will also start to rate the images, and I use a star system. So once I get home from the trip, I will take the travel archive, and now I will merge that with my main photo archive into my computer at home. So I use import from another catalog, and I will just take the travel archive catalog, import that into my main photo archive catalog, and save it on my main hard drives. So to import from another catalog, what you need to do is have the travel archive catalog plugged in, and then you would go under import from another catalog in Lightroom, select that catalog and hit choose, and then it will look and bring in all those images, copy it over, copy all the metadata info over, any ratings and all that, all over into my main hard drive. So any adjustments that I might have made, anything that I've done will automatically be brought over to my main Lightroom catalog. I don't do a lot of editing when I'm traveling. I basically will try to look at the images, get rid of the ones I don't want, and if I can rate some of them, I will rate them with a rating system. My rating system is a little different than some. I use 2 stars for images that I think I might want to get rid of, but I want to look at closer, so I'll mark it 2 stars. 3 stars are ones that I tend to keep. 4 stars are ones that I plan to work on that are a little better than the 3, but I think are worth working on first. And then I label 5-star ones when I'm finished with them. I use the X key in Lightroom to mark them for deletion, and then when I'm all done marking them for deletion, I can delete them all in one shot. And right here is under photo at the very bottom is where you can delete rejected photos all in one quick click of the button. So that's why the X one works really nice. You do need to be in grid mode for it to delete them all, Just make sure that you know that. Then I go, after I've deleted everything, rated everything, that's when I start to rename my photos. And so you need to be in grid view in Lightroom, of course. You select all of them, hit the drop down menu under library, hit rename, and I will rename the photos. You get this pop-up window up on top. I have a custom template that I made where it's a custom text, the date, which is the current date that the stuff was shot, mainly the year, and then a 5-digit sequence number. I created that as a preset so that it always pops up, and then I'm able to just type in, say Superior. It automatically puts that date in for me automatically, and I can start it at whatever number I want. Usually I start at number 1, and if I end up adding to that file set of files later, I can find that last number and start from there and continue numbering if I would need to. You can see in the example what it's going to look like, and then if you're happy with that, you hit OK, and everything gets renumbered. It does take a little while to renumber it, but then you have your number with, for me, where the place that I was at, the year that I shot it, and then a sequence number after that. And that's basically how I do it. Anybody have any questions on that? Or
Jeff, question here.
Sure.
I noticed you didn't talk about it, but it looks like you have converted all your images to DNGs. You want to talk about that a little bit?
I do that sometimes. Older stuff I will convert to DNG, depending on how much time I have. A lot of times I'll bring it in just as the regular Nikon RAW files. If I think I'm going to work in another program that would work better as a RAW file, I'll leave it as the NEF file for Nikon. A lot of times I will convert it to DNG. I don't convert all the time, partially because it takes so long if I'm shooting a lot of images. But what I end up doing as things sit for a longer period of time, I will slowly convert them to DNG. I used to recommend doing it right off the bat. I don't do it as much as I used to, because sometimes the Nikon's RAW file can be handy.
Jeff,
So,
Why do you
not
do
a good
that?
answer, I guess.
Why do you do it? Why do you do the DNG step?
The reason I do DNG, I do it for old files because every time the camera manufacturer brings out a new RAW file, it's another RAW file that Photoshop and Adobe have to keep track of. Right now, I think there's probably close to about 500 different RAW file formats. And they're starting not to always support the old format because who's using the old Nikon D1 anymore with its RAW file format? So for the older ones, I convert those to DNG because it's a standardized file format that a lot of places are using. But with the new cameras, I'm keeping the raw NEF files for the time being. And then as they get to be a couple years old, I'll convert them all to DNG. And DNG is just Adobe's standardized RAW file format.
Jeffrey, I have a question.
Sure.
I've had a problem with not Lightroom, and I was wondering if you or anyone else has seen this problem. I'm not sure what to do about it, but you were talking about rating your images. When I rate my images, I set my filter to unrated so that I can click through them and they disappear when they've been rated. But
Right.
when I have that filter on and I hover over the stars, I click on it, I click on the star, and if I move the mouse, it automatically rates the next image just by hovering over the stars. And so when I'm all done, I end up with a bunch of images that are rated incorrectly. Has anyone else seen this bug in Lightroom?
I haven't noticed it, but I use the keyboard shortcut for rating the stars, so I
Oh,
don't.
maybe I'll do that. That's a good idea.
Yeah, because it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So I use an extended keyboard, so my hand just sits on the keyboard, and I have auto advance turned on, so as soon as I rate it, it jumps right to the next image, and my fingers, I just can look at the image and my finger hits the keypad.
I'll try that.
And
That might work
that
better.
works a lot easier than trying to do it the other way.
Yeah,
Yeah,
hovering over the mouse, it automatically clicks the star.
right.
Yeah, I've had the same problem where if I use the mouse to select the number or the star rating, and I've got it set for automatically go to the next photo, sometimes it'll automatically advance and give the next photo a 5-star.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. And I've Googled it and I've looked at the Adobe forums and I'm not been able to find anyone who's reported it. So glad to hear that there is someone else that's seeing that.
Yeah, see, I've never worked that way. I've always worked with the extended keyboard, and my fingers just sit between 3 and 4, and I know which finger is on which, and I can just really zip through them pretty quick.
Yeah, I'll try that because when I'm all done, I have to go back and filter on the 5s to see if they're all 5s and go through each star and go
Yeah.
through them all again. It takes a lot longer.
Yeah, no, that would slow you down quite a bit.
Jeff, I've got a question for you.
Sure.
When you create your backup for your travel hard drive, do you export as a catalog before you import them into Lightroom from the new computer?
No, because you can just work right from that catalog. There's no reason to export them. You can, as long as you can plug that. I keep that travel catalog on that hard drive, so that when I plug that hard drive in, then when I import from another catalog, I just have to go to that one and it automatically. So you don't need to export that catalog out.
So you had that hard drive somehow set up as a separate Lightroom
Yeah.
catalog?
Yeah. Yeah.
You'll have
It's
to
a
show me
separate-
how to do that, because
Yeah.
I usually just take my photos and copy them. I usually just go to my laptop for rating and so forth when I'm traveling, and then I connect my hard drive to it, and what I do is I export them as a catalog, take them upstairs, hook it up to my desktop, and then import it as a catalog.
Yeah. See, and since I've already got the catalog and the files all on that hard drive, all I have to do is plug that hard drive in when I get home and import that catalog straight. I don't have to go through that extra
Okay.
export
All right,
step.
you have to show me how to do that.
Yeah, it saves time and saves the energy of duplicating the files, because it can just read that catalog straight and bring it right in.
Yeah, I'm not understanding how you got the photos, onto the hard drive in that catalog.
It's a separate catalog that I have set up on that hard drive. So instead of starting Lightroom up in my main catalog, I started up with the travel catalog instead. I've got a separate catalog that's just labeled travel that I start fresh on every trip. So it's all stored right on that one SSD drive, because that's a solid state hard drive that I'm using.
And so then when you import, then it goes directly onto that SSD drive into that catalog.
Right. Right.
Okay.
So I'm just using a separate catalog from instead of using my main photo catalog.
Okay, cute. Thank you.
Sure. Any other questions?
Hey, Jeff, when
Yeah.
when you say you're moving that folder, so let me see if I get this straight. When you plug your SD card into your reader and it pops up, you just drag that card from the reader onto your desktop?
Yep.
Okay. Never thought of doing that. It's probably a lot faster than trying to grab all of them and move them over into another folder.
Right. Yeah, I find it works easier. I just go down to the one folder that's there that has just all the images in. I just drag that over, and it copies fairly quick. And then I import it into Lightroom, into my travel catalog. It's an extra step, but it also gives me an extra copy. And then once I get it on all the hard drives, then I feel free to erase the card.
Right. Yeah. Right now I have it whenever I put a card in, it automatically opens up Lightroom for the import. But I think that might be a better way to do it.
Yeah, sometimes it works better. Sometimes I do it direct. If it's just a few images, I'll do it direct. But I've had problems where things haven't gone right, and it just found and I find that it gets me extra an extra copy because I really like to have 3 copies if I can.
Jeff, I may I make a recommendation?
Sure.
When I started doing it like you did, where I upload from my camera to my desktop or wherever, and then importing into the catalog. But I stopped doing that, and I now import directly from Lightroom, from my camera into Lightroom. I can apply keywords at the same time. You can do that when you import from the hard drive, but I think it saves time to just go directly into Lightroom. And then if you want that third copy, you can make the second copy in Lightroom while you're importing. But if you want that third copy, then you can just pick the whole directory up on your hard drive and copy it to wherever you want it. Nothing wrong with the way that you're doing it, but I think people should know that there's choices.
Oh yeah, there's a lot of different ways to do this. My way is certainly my way does take more time. In some ways, you're right. If I did it straight from the card into Lightroom, it works. I have a file structure that I like, so that's why I like doing the desktop where each folder I can date and then bring it in. But yeah.
I do that in Lightroom though.
Hmm?
I name the folders in Lightroom. In fact, in Lightroom, I go back and rename them, and after the date, I put where it was taken so that I can quickly go back through and look at them.
Yeah, and I use dates and then I rename it when I do the final renaming. So, but yeah, I think you'll see other people do it. I asked Marty to explain his system a little bit, and if anybody else wants to explain how they do theirs, we'll be glad to do that too. I was going to ask for more people, and then I ran out of days to start contacting people.
One disadvantage of doing it my way, though, is that there have been times when I've had trouble getting the Lightroom to see the camera, and I've had to unplug things and plug it back in a couple times. So I actually time there.
And I never do it straight from the camera. I always do it from a card reader.
I don't have a reader anymore.
Yeah, I don't trust doing it straight from the camera. I've had too many problems where things haven't all automatically downloaded, or my battery, if I didn't pay attention, dies in the middle of the download and it corrupts the whole card. So it's just so much simpler to pull that card out of the camera and plug it into a card reader. And I just have to carry 2 different card readers around, and I don't have a problem, and it's a little safer for me.
Yeah, I've had the problem. I always make sure I have at least half a battery on my camera before I start downloading. And I have,
You-
early on, I did run out of battery in the middle, but it never corrupted the card. I'm not seeing that.
Yeah, I've had it where it corrupted the card and I'd had to reformat the card or had to use software to pull off the images because it screwed up the directory. So I don't take the chance. Generally, it's easier to pull the card out for me, and a lot of times I'm charging those batteries up so while I'm downloading. So it's just simpler, even though I do have a lot of batteries too. So, but yeah, it's just my system. Yeah, Jim.
Jeff, I was just going to mention to you, I noticed that you had said you use a GPS device to put the GPS on your photos. I just saw for Sony people, and I presume it's on some of the other brands now, where you can have your phone be your GPS and it will throw that information right onto your photos. I haven't done it yet, but they tell me it drains very little power from both your phone or your camera. But every time you take a picture, you'll get the GPS data from your phone. That saves you from carrying another device.
Yeah, it can, and I know. I believe Brian does that when we've been traveling. He has a app that you use, don't you, Brian?
Yeah, I haven't used it, in a couple years, but that works well for me. It doesn't transfer the GPS information directly to the camera. It stores it, in the phone, and then you get home, and there's a little program that comes with it, and then that uses that then to merge the GPS data in with the file data, and it works good. It's I'll try to find the name of it. I don't know if I have it on any devices right now or not.
Yeah.
Brian, I used that before I had a GPS in my camera, and I found that the coordinates weren't very accurate. It may be better today, but this was 4 or 5 years ago.
The one I used was quite accurate. It would. I'll see if I can find the name of it.
Yeah.
I've been using the one that Nikon put out. It's called Nikon SnapBridge, and it's the same one that you can use your phone like as a remote control, but I don't use it for that. It has a feature in there that you can say upload GPS coordinate to camera. So I'll do that like at the start of when I'm going to shoot something. And then if I walk around a whole bunch of different places, maybe I'll do it again. So it only is going to use that power to update the camera for that one little bit. And then every picture you take after that, unless you turn the camera off, will still have that same position. So, I mean, as long as okay, well, I went to, last weekend I went to the Capitol. So I just punched it in there. Everybody knows where the Capitol is anyways, but I like to have the GPS tag at least close enough that then in Lightroom later, I can just drag it to where I really went. And it's, 2 blocks away or whatever.
Yeah.
Does that use data off the cell tower or the satellites?
Well, whatever your phone is doing. So because it's taking the GPS from your phone. So I'm assuming off of satellite. And usually, unless you turn GPS off on your phone, it's going to always be accurate. I've never had a problem where it was anything more than, maybe 50 feet different from where I really was.
I was kind of disappointed with Canon. I've stayed with Canon over the years, and that's been one of the features that I've not been willing to give up is internal GPS. And now I found out I'm thinking of going mirrorless in the next year or so. And I found out that their new mirrorless Canon R5 does not have the internal GPS. I don't know why they took that out.
No.
But I've been asking people, because I'm going to go completely new lenses and everything, it's a chance for me to switch brands. And I've been with Canon forever. So I was told, and people can correct me, but the Sony cameras do have internal GPS, but the Nikon do not. Is that correct? Does anyone know?
Nikon doesn't have it built into their cameras. No. I have no idea about Sony.
The reason I mentioned the idea about Sony is this, as I understand it, the programs are already built into the Sony to take the GPS coordinates from your camera, and it does it with every photo. I haven't tried it yet. I'll do it by the next meeting and I'll report back if it works well or not. But so I do know it's available to the Sony, but it would be from your phone, because you're right. A lot of the manufacturers have pulled those electronics out. I think they're really cramped for space, and I don't think they're trying to put those in as much as they were.
Yeah, and Roger Krill is saying that his Canon app, the Canon Connect, writes right to the camera file directly. The phone needs to maintain a Bluetooth connection, but it's writing that Canon GPS. So that must be similar to what Nikon Snap program is doing. I gotta admit, trying to keep a Bluetooth connection, my phones tend to die out pretty quick during a day, so that's why I like the $45 add-on piece. I still get half a day, 3/4 of a day on a battery, so it's not like that GPS drains it a whole lot.
Well, on the Canon, the GPS, the latest edition on the 5D Mark IV, they added the option to turn the GPS off if you turn the camera off, or keep it on all the time. But they don't have the option of turning it off if the camera goes to sleep, which they should. If I leave the GPS on in the earlier cameras, if I forgot to turn it off and left it on even when the camera's off, the next day the battery would be dead, even if I had a full battery. So, but the GPS doesn't take much. I mean, if you think about it, you have GPSs in your tiny phone, and so it doesn't take a lot of room. I'm not sure why the manufacturers are ripping them out of the later cameras.
Yeah,
it's interesting. They put them in some of the consumer cameras, but not the high end. So, by the way, the program that I've used is GPS, the number 4 CAM, GPS number 4 CAM, GPS 4cam. So that's worked good for me.
I have a question about this GPS stuff. So if you have the GPS recorded in your file, then you're going to have the numbers, right? Just the numbers, not the specific name and location. So how do you know? Do you click on that? Then that takes you to a program that tells you that you're in Sawtooth or something?
Yeah, if you're in Lightroom, Lightroom has the map module that will actually show you where the photos were taken. And I mean, the GPSs that I've used puts me within 30 feet of that location, unless I'm under really heavy, dense trees where it can't read all the time. But it's helps me so much when I need to know what's the name of that waterfall, because I think Lightroom is using Google Maps, and it will show you the name of that waterfall there, and then you can transfer that over to your files.
Okay, thanks.
So I like it. I'm terrible at taking notes. I'm really bad.
Travel, it's indispensable. It was pretty good. I used it in Antarctica last year when I was there last January, and I can click on Google Maps and it goes right to the places, or I click on it in Lightroom and it shows me the Google map right in Antarctica.
Yep.
What I've also found is that by tagging locations, people can find them, especially on sites like Flickr, where it keeps the location data. And if people can find them, then they want to buy them. So I've sold quite a few images because company A saw that I posted a picture of their building. So then they send me an email saying, hey, we want to use that for our brochures or whatever. So that's why I keep doing it, even though it takes, a few more seconds to connect my phone to the camera before I start walking around and shooting. But like I said, I only do that at the beginning, and I turn the app off so it's not keeping that Bluetooth connection and using up battery.
Yeah.
Is that something you can exclude when you transfer a file? Is the GPS on the metadata or not?
Yeah, you could erase it if you wanted to.
Well, I was just curious because when I'm shooting I was shooting some snowy owls and I share my photos. I don't want people knowing where exact locations are at for obvious reasons.
Something like that, I wouldn't even, connect at the beginning. I was like, okay,
Okay.
I don't need to know where this was. So, also, anything, family events and all that stuff, I don't need to tag that with my brother's house or anything like that. So I just don't need to do it then. So.
Yeah, I only do it when I'm traveling or shooting normal stuff. So it's just handy to have, and so yeah, I use it pretty often.
Yeah, when I'm traveling, sometimes I take pictures, even if they're not good pictures. I can see the route that I took if I take road signs or just the road as I'm traveling. And then when I get home, I can look at the map and I can see exactly the route we took on the map.
Sure. Yep. Great. Well, I asked Marty to sort of talk through some of his workflow. So, Marty, you want to?
I'm going to be brave and do it. I'm going to do a live download. We'll see how this works. But so, Jeff, as you were going through yours, I guess my workflow isn't too unlike yours, with the exception of I take Lightroom totally out of the equation.
Right.
But then I'm adding into it a little bit of On1 and a little bit of Luminar. So, but my naming convention kind of is similar and whatnot. My naming convention actually goes back to film days, when I started shooting rodeos. When I shot the rodeos, I would actually have a list of all the contestants. So I had to have a way to track the contestants with their images. And I came up with what I thought was a pretty good system. And for instance, it would have been the name of the rodeo, then roll 3, frame 32 to 35 or whatever it was. So that way I had a way to reference back to it. So I don't do, because of that, I don't do a whole lot of deleting of images, because if I started deleting in the middle of that, it would kind of screw up that whole coordination. But that said, I'll kind of walk through. I shot a small event last night, so I'll just walk through kind of how I do that. And let's see how this works. So I start out in Canon's Digital Professional after I've got the card out of the camera. And if everything works here, you can see the card showed up over here on the left column. And I'll go down into my folder here. It's, you were mentioning, they've got the structure in here to do this. So I know these are the images. And you can see that. And so I don't usually shoot RAW. I did shoot these, both JPEGs and RAWs last night, just knowing that I would be demonstrating this. So there's actually probably twice as many pictures as it really looks like here. So as they all load in, okay. So once I have them all loaded, here is where if I did decide that there was something I wanted to delete on an event like this, I would delete right away. If there was something way out of focus, so you can see I did some test shots of this chair, I can take them out of the mix before I really start doing my download. But in this case, I'm just going to leave them in. I'm going to select all the images, and it wants to go up here and batch process. So I do my naming right from this program as I bring them in. So I'm going to go to a folder where I'm going to put these pictures in here. And you can see I kind of have this laid out similar to what Jeff has. So I've got my miscellaneous events. I need to add a folder in here. And I'm just going to call this Philips installation 2021. So then I've got my folder created. I'm going to open up that folder. I'm going to go down here on the bottom and this is where I would start the naming of the file then. So I'll just say the same thing here. And then I can start my sequence. And much like Jeff, I kind of always start from 0, but I start with 0 with every event that I shoot. So I'll just give it a 3 number instead of a 4 number. I don't want to really convert the raws, so I'm just going to say execute. And so what it's going to do then is bring those files into that folder. Unfortunately, it's going to take a couple minutes here because of the raw files. So I guess as we're waiting for that, does anybody have any questions to this point? Or
So
does
what is the
anybody?
program, Marty, that you're using?
So I'm using Canon's digital photo professional.
Okay.
You know, in the latest version of that. And I've done it this way for umpteen years. I could probably change my workflow a little bit and bring them right directly into On1 and do the similar process there. But it's just kind of like, you know, you get used to doing something one way, so you just kind of keep doing it that way because it works for me. So that's why I keep doing it.
Sure.
Any other questions at this point?
I would say that, like, my workflow, you could use any program. You know, I use Lightroom, but yeah, you could use Luminar, you could use On1 Photo. Any cataloging program would work fine. Even probably Bridge if you didn't want to catalog it, because it would all be about the same thing. So
as far as you're bringing them in, renaming them and all that, if you wanted to rename them right away, yeah. And you know, I know not everybody needs to rename them right away, but you said the key thing is that if you don't do something with your naming convention, you can end up with so many duplicates. I've seen that so many times from other people, and it would drive me absolutely nuts. So I've just decided that early on, this was the best way for me to do this.
Yeah. And yeah, you don't want to have duplicate numbers, because that can really mess you up, and it can even mess up the flow of your images if you get duplicate numbers, if you sort by file number instead of by date or something.
Well, if you include a date as part of the file name, that then negates, you know, having duplicate images with the same number.
Right.
That's what I do.
Of course, I do it the old-fashioned way. I see when my camera is getting to in the 9,000s, I keep an eye on it, and then I change the name of the file in the camera. I add an A or a B to the name, so I know then when it starts over again, it's not going to have any duplications, because it's going to have a different letter connotation to the next 10,000. So
yeah. I rename mine more because I'm too lazy to use keywords, and if I put the name of what my file is, I can find it a little quicker. Plus, probably next month we might just show file organization as well on the different programs, because that's a whole nother way of doing things too. Everybody has a different system for organizing. As you saw Marty's while his was going there, you know, he has one way of doing it. I do my stuff all by subject matter, and have it stored that way. And then in the subject matter, I use dates. But so I would imagine everybody does it different.
Right, exactly. So, you know, you're right, Jeff. So I'll have, like, you know, with all my rodeos, it was a folder with the year, that year, and then all the rodeos I was at during that year, and those would start out with the rodeo name, date, and year. And then, you know, as far as the keywording goes, so, you know, by adding in the main name to the files on import, then I go back and again with the rodeos, I had my workflow down to a point where from the time the rodeo was done in the evening, I went back, downloaded, and had them live on my sales site within about 45 minutes, and that included keywording all the files with the contestants' names, and you know, that was on average about 300 files to keyword. And you know, once you get used to that, it actually does move pretty quick. But part of it is I don't have to rename the files themselves. I'm just, because they're already done by import. So I just have to just go back in and do the keywording real quick.
While we're waiting, Marty, I've got Steve Coates is asking if I'm doing edits in Lightroom and using their catalog for organization, why rename the file? I sort of answered that in that I use it as a way to keyword my files. And because even though the camera counts from 1 to 10,000, I shoot a lot of images on a trip, and so I need to rename them so that they have unique file names, and it's just simpler. The camera file name gives me no information whatsoever other than maybe the camera that I shot it with. So I'd rather rename it with what the name of the file needs to be. So
yeah, I mean, I kind of look at that as per event. So, you know, for instance, a few weeks ago, I photographed an ice cutting here in Junction City. So that was JC Ice Cutting 2021. And then the files keep going through that. So, you know, am I physically looking at all these files with my eyes? They don't go crazy looking at a bunch of random numbers. I'm looking at, okay, here's exactly what the event is. And here's my naming or my numbering convention then within that. It just seems a little less daunting to me as I go through large catalogs of files to find something a little more targeted.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know,
I mean, I have 314,000 images, so.
Right.
And that's both my commercial work and my fun stuff, so.
Right.
I know that this is really just to people who use Lightroom, but on import, there's so much data you can put in on the import page. So for instance, there's a thing that says file name. There's a little box for you, and I put in there things like Milwaukee Zoo, Milwaukee Domes. So it puts the date first, then the word Milwaukee Domes, and then it puts the number of the actual photo in there. Then if I put a few keywords down below, like Milwaukee Zoo or animals or a couple of other things, those also get thrown in as I import. So I'm not duplicating any of these actions several times. It's all done on the import, and it's so much quicker.
Yeah, I don't rename on the import only because there's a lot of times I'm deleting a lot of files, and I go, why not rename it after they're all in? And it's just the way that I do it. I do sometimes in the keyword section of Lightroom, I do put in, if I'm traveling, that specific area that I'm in. But a lot of times I'm shooting all day long and I'm in 3 or 4 different waterfalls, and I don't want to just import this small batch and name it that and this small batch. So I'll just use real generic names. But I just find that I never use the keywords. So.
Yeah. And there again, and that's why I guess that's what leaves me do what I do, because I use keywords very heavily with the rodeo stuff. And so, Jim, I get your point, and a lot of that then those same things that I do actually happen then when I do bring these into on one, and that's where I add the IPTC data. And you know, that could be everything from my contact information to copyright date to any of those other things you mentioned that you want to put in as either keywords or other markers within that data. And then of course that's readable by pretty much any other program once it's embedded.
Yeah, so I think you're kind of doing what I'm doing. Yours is a little different. Again, that's why I said right away, it's the other system would work for Lightroom, but you have to kind of keyword it here. And then it will wind up being in whatever program you add them into later.
Right, yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Cool. I guess it's whatever works for you too. My system came up in strange ways, and it works for me. So.
And that's just it. I mean, the whole point of this is to show here's a number of different workflows, because there are a lot of people who have no workflow. They every time they download, it's probably a different scenario for them, and hopefully, you know, by seeing a few different ways here that people will, glam onto something that actually might work for them a little bit better.
Right.
You know.
Marty, I don't see a progress indicator on your rename.
Yeah, it's going. I'm at 80 out of 159, so it's slowly going. Sorry about
Yeah,
that. If I realized, I forgot these raw files were big files, and again, I don't normally shoot raws, so I forgot how long they take to process. So I screwed up there for you guys. Sorry.
I've got from Steve Coates, I was just thinking with non-destructive characteristics of Lightroom, if you look for an image, you'll be using Lightroom to find it. Do you create different catalogs or use one large catalog? And I use one large catalog. So at home, I have one catalog that keeps everything all together. I used to have a business catalog and a fine art personal catalog, and just found that after a while I was having to close one to open another and going back and forth too often, so I merged them all together. At one time, Lightroom couldn't handle large quantities of pictures, and now they can. So like I said, I've got 315,000 images in one catalog, and it works just fine. And that's what I recommend, is one large catalog for everything. Now, when I travel, I have a travel catalog only because I don't have the catalog that I'm storing the final images on with me, because that would be me taking a RAID unit with me. I don't want to carry another 25 pounds worth of hard drives with me. So I have a portable setup for traveling, and then I transfer that all to my main catalog when I get home. So.
Yeah, you need like a motor home with a server built in.
Yep. And I have enough stuff in my car as it is.
You don't need to have those files that are on your RAID available, because you're not going to edit those when you're traveling. That's what I do. I've got everything that's old that I've already processed that I put out on my external drives, and Lightroom knows that's where they are. And then the stuff I'm working on today is on the drive on the computer, and then I have a portable drive to back up while I'm traveling. But I don't have to do any multiple catalogs. I just keep them in the same catalog.
I just found it was easier because I don't take the computer with the catalog that I have my main catalog on. Okay. I take my travel computer, which is is actually my home computer, because I don't want my expensive computer with me when I'm traveling. So it doesn't have the main Lightroom catalog even on it. So it's just simpler for me to create a travel catalog. And it was how I was taught to do it in the beginning, and it just keeps working for me. I could probably do smart previews and keep that catalog on both computers using Dropbox or something, but it's just the system that I came up with. Like I said, I think everybody's got a different system that they use, and I don't think there's any right or wrong way. It's what works for you.
No, that's exactly right,
always, yeah, I just hope I never fill up a 1 terabyte drive when I travel, and I come close sometimes.
with these newer cameras and as big as the files are getting, that probably won't take long on some of these cameras.
Yeah,
it's sad, but it's true.
Yeah, I do bring extra hard drives with just in case.
And the sad thing is also with these new cameras, I've been starting to video record. Oh my gosh, does that take enormous amount of space?
Yeah, video files are certainly a lot bigger. Absolutely. Even on the drone stuff, the few times that I've done video on that, it is amazing how big those files can get real quick, even a short file.
Yep. While we're still waiting here, Roger Krill is asking, why haven't the camera manufacturers added another digit to the numbering system? I think they always figured that who's going to shoot 10,000 images in one shot or one group? Although I got to admit, I've done it on our 10-day trips shooting waterfalls. I have shot 10,000 images and tripped over my counter once. Don't generally go much more than 10, but considering that when I'm shooting waterfalls, I'm shooting 3 shots every time, so I get a lot more images that I do have with me that I tend to get rid of after a while. But
Get about 30 more images and then we'll be there. Sorry again. I apologize. I don't shoot raw hardly ever, and I forgot how big those files are. So
well, this works out great because we can still talk about other issues that come up.
Yeah.
No, Peter, my brand new camera, I only have about 100 images. My Z6 that I have, I've already turned 10,000 5 times. So my D850, I have over 150,000 images shot on it. So I tend to go through folders, and it's sort of nice with the way Nikon does it. You can tell how many 10,000 images you shot by the folder count. And my D850, I think, is on folder, it starts at 101, and I think I'm at around 121 or something like that. So I burned through files pretty quick.
yeah, I think if I wasn't changing it, restarting my numbering every time, and for my cards, yeah, you're right. I'd probably keep that same count going all the way through the cards. But the way that I find with Canon, that every time I reformat the card, I reset the folder, and that takes that part back to 0.
Yeah, sure. Sheldon Shaw is asking, what is the preferred color space setting, sRGB or Adobe RGB? I use Adobe RGB. I want the largest color setting I can get, so that I can record the largest amount of colors. Most of the monitors sort of show in between those two settings if you've got a modern monitor. Unless you spend a lot of money on a monitor, and then you can see Adobe RGB. But the monitors I have are IPS, so they're slightly better than sRGB, but not as good as Adobe RGB. But you might as well pick the highest color setting that you can have.
The highest one is ProPhoto. It's a little bit higher.
Right, the higher one is ProPhoto, but cameras only shoot Adobe RGB or sRGB. Those are the two choices you have in Canon, I believe Canon and Nikon and Sony. But you have the raw file, which gets you a little bit more information yet. But if you're shooting JPEG, Adobe RGB is really what you want. Raw, you set the color space when you're editing.
Oops. I know I stopped sharing. I gotta go back into that. Sorry about that. I'm almost there, so I was gonna move over to the next screen because it'll show you what I do next here. So I got about 9 photos left, and then we'll be in there.
Okay. Stephen Youngersworth was asking, what are the pros and cons of importing directly into Lightroom and then back up from there? You can do it straight into Lightroom. A lot of people do it that way. I just use it to give me an extra copy of the file by downloading to my desktop and then importing, or to import straight from the card right in. Works just fine for most people. It just was the way I was taught, was to download it to my desktop first. So.
Yeah,
you need a faster computer, Marty.
16 gigs of RAM, I don't know if it's the sharing part maybe is slowing us down. We're about there. So one file left here. To your comment about the whole folder thing, and I think when we all went to digital, I think we were all searching for a way to make that efficient for ourselves. And at the time, that probably was what worked best. until we all develop the file systems we have now.
Yep.
Because, I mean, you think about film, we had a little folder, and I used to write on the front of the folder the exact same stuff I'm doing in the digital folders now.
Yeah, I really set up the same way that I did with negatives and slides back in the old days. So that's sort of how my system came about. And back when I first started doing this, downloading digital files was not as easy as it is today. Computers have gotten a lot more reliable than they were 15 years ago. So, but it's hard to break old habits.
Yeah, and again, that's why I do some of the things that I do. You're right. I could probably bring these I know I could bring these directly here into on one that I'm in now, and probably rename the files and everything. Just doing that, I guess maybe I should play with that a little bit and take the Canon portion out. It would save me the one step that Jim was saying. I just never really did it that way, so this is what I continue to do. So
yep.
So you can see it on one here now. I've got all the files, and I guess I'm just showing my JPEGs right now. I'm not showing the raw files in here. And I'm going to turn it on. But as far as putting IPTC data in, I have a template made for that. So I just go up under my pre-made templates, and you can see it auto-fills, things like my contact information, my copyright information, and then you can put a description in here, keywords and whatnot. So this actually can go pretty quick. If I wanted to, I'll just select them all. And if I wanted to just put a description of Elk's installation in here. So when I went to search later, that would be readable. So then I just go up and I just say, okay, embed that to all the photos, and and then it would just go ahead and add that data into those photos. And then if I wanted to put in just a specific name for some of these pictures, I can add that right in here then, and you can do them a couple at a time, as you see. And so then that actually speeds the process right along too. And so I'll just embed that to those same two photos and freeze my computer up, apparently. I froze, didn't I? Oh, Jeff.
You're still moving, but yeah, it looks like your screen share was frozen.
Yeah, it still is. I just went back into on one and it's still frozen. So anyway, once I have the images there, and I guess we'll go into the next step here. Yeah, I'm still frozen and on one.
You may have to force quit.
Yeah.
Yeah, doing Zoom and all this other stuff gets taxing on these computers.
Especially like your screen sharing and whatnot, that's gonna.
Yeah.
Yeah. So all right, we'll just force quit that. So from there, then I've got these images now. Let me open up I'm hiding my screen share button. There it is. So now I've got them in my file structure here on an external drive, much like Jeff did. So you can see, I've got the folder I put them in, and you can see they're on this folder. For my duplication, then I just open up on I screen share it to my other computer, and I basically copy that to an external drive on that computer as well. So then I've got them in two different places. Once I've got them in there, then I can open up that same folder in Luminar, on one in Apple's Photos and Pixelmator, any of those programs. I have access to those same files. On one, or excuse me, a Luminar or Luminar AI will create their mirrored catalog, but it's never touching those original files. It's basically a duplicate of that. So, and I just work on the files as needed, export them as needed. So it I don't know. I find my workflow fairly streamlined. Again, I might look at bringing him right into on one right to start with and take that first step out, which I think would save time. But if you're not a Lightroom user, there are other options out there for cataloging. Apple's Photos program, if you're a Mac user, actually does a fairly good job of cataloging in that respect too, as far as the organization's standpoint. You just don't have as many tools as you do in Lightroom or in On One. So,
No, and the problem with the Apple Photo one is that it keeps everything in one giant file and not separate.
well,
And,
right, you have to manually separate them. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's a nightmare when you come to, you got to keep it on your main hard drive too, which
Right.
tends
Oh
to
no,
be.
you can store that on an external hard drive.
Oh,
I've done
can
that.
you now?
With Apple.
I've just been dealing with that, and I just hate photos. So
Yeah, I agree. I mean, here's the thing, Jeff. I mean, if it's all you have, it actually can be very capable if that's what you have to work with. You just have to learn how to deal with it. But we're spoiled because we've got other programs that we know do a better job.
I've just had to try to help somebody that was having a lot of problems with it, and so it's left a sour taste in my mouth.
Yeah.
It's not one of Apple's better programs, that's for sure. But if it's all you've got, it works. It works.
It would have just stuck with Aperture. We'd all be happy.
Oh yeah, no, thank you. I like some of the other ones better. Roger Krill was just mentioning on his new Canon camera, the R6. If you use Adobe RGB, your file numbering will change to the first character being an underscore. It's not a software bug. That's how all the companies do it. Even Nikon, if you shoot an sRGB, it's the file name is 3 letters and then an underscore. And for us, for Adobe RGB, it's underscore and then 3 letters and then the file number. So it's the same way in Nikon as it is for Canon. It's just the way they differentiate sRGB over Adobe RGB. So not sure why they do it that way, but they do. And that's why part of the reason I renumber after a while. But yeah. So any other questions? We're at the top of the hour as it is. So I think we'll call it a day. If, again, my standard plea, if anybody has something they'd like us to talk about, send me a note and I'll add it to the list. We might talk about showing maybe different people's way that they store their files on their computer. Maybe that file structure might be handy for some. You've sort of seen a little bit of Marty's. That's sort of the next step I go after all this part of the workflow is my actual file structure, and I'll talk about mine. I got the feeling somebody probably files by date. Anybody out there file by date?
Yeah, that would be me.
Okay. Maybe we'll have you show us, if you don't mind, next month how you do it by date so we can see how that works. I started out early, well, like Marty and I were talking, I went from negatives and slides, and actually I shot both. Actually, I shot more negatives than anything. And I basically took my file system from my negatives and do it the same thing with my digital. So that's how my system got developed.
You can see behind me here, all those folders are that's rodeos from 95 to 2002 until I switched to digital. And, basically that same file structure is what I'm using now. And if I had to go back and find a picture of somebody from, 1998, they tell me what rodeo they're at, what year, and I can go back in and find that picture without any problem, either on a negative or on a digital file.
Yeah, I must have 30 binders of negatives sitting in a shelf in my lower level with going back to, well, I didn't get that organized, so I think I go back to 1990 or 85, something like that. And I can still find stuff most of the time. But so that might be something that we'll talk about next month. We'll see what hits me as we get into April and that. So I'll post what we do. But and I may look for a couple volunteers to maybe show, you know, how your file system works. We'll see as we get there. But again, send me ideas of what you'd like us to talk about. We got spring coming, so we'll maybe start talking a little bit more about camera stuff itself and showing some of that, and we'll see. We'll see what we come up with next. So with that, I want to thank everybody for showing up on a rainy Saturday morning. And
don't you love it when things work out well?
Yeah. Yep. You can't go out too much and shoot in the rain today. So hopefully it'll clear up soon. So thanks everybody for coming, and we'll see you next month.
Thanks,
Thank you
Jeff.
for the tips, Jeff, on